The signal came at 0347 hours, crackling through the vast emptiness of space like a dying scream. On the observation deck of Station Alpha 7, Council Member Vex stared at the green holographic display with his 4 eyes, each blinking in sequence. The transmission was weak, broken, but the desperation in it was clear to anyone who listened. "Help us," the voice pleaded in the universal translator. "The Vorthok have come. Our world burns. We cannot fight them. Please, someone, anyone, help us." Vex's purple skin shifted to a darker shade, showing his worry. In his 300 years of service to the Galactic Council, he had heard many distress calls. Most came too late. This one felt different, more urgent, more hopeless. "Where is this coming from?" asked Council Member Nira, her tentacles swaying nervously around her floating chair. "The Kepler 442 system," Vex replied, his voice soft. "Outer Rim territory. Very far from any Council worlds." "The Vorthok Empire," whispered Elder Zara from her crystal chamber. At 800 years old, she was the oldest member of the Council. Her voice carried the weight of seeing too many worlds fall. They have been moving outward, taking everything in their path, enslaving entire species. The Council chamber filled with worried murmurs. 23 different species sat in their specialized seats, each adapted for their unique biology. Some breathed different gases. Others needed specific temperatures. All of them feared the Vorthok. "We should help them," said Nira, her voice shaking slightly. "These beings are asking for our protection." "With what?" Vex asked, spreading his thin arms wide. "The Vorthok have 10,000 warships. We have exploration vessels and research stations. We are scientists and philosophers, not warriors. The distance alone makes it impossible," added Council Member Rock, his stone-like features never-changing expression.
Ow.
"It would take our fastest ships 6 months to reach that system. By then, whatever civilization sent this signal will be dead or enslaved." Elder Zara nodded slowly. "The Vorthok do not wait. They strike fast and brutal. They take what they want and destroy what they cannot use." The debate continued for hours. Some council members wanted to send a diplomatic message to the Vorthok, asking them to leave the unknown species alone. Others suggested recording the distress call for historical records, so future generations would remember this lost civilization. A few, like Nira, still insisted they should try to help. "We cannot save everyone," Vex said finally. "It is a hard truth, but it is truth. We must focus on protecting the worlds we can defend." The council voted. 17 members chose to do nothing. 6 voted to send a diplomatic message that would arrive months too late. Only 3 voted to attempt a rescue mission that everyone knew was impossible. As the council session ended, the distress signal continued to play in the background, growing weaker with each repetition. Soon, it would fade completely, and another species would disappear from the galaxy forever. But the signal did not only reach council space. It traveled further, bouncing off stellar formations and space dust, carrying its desperate message across the dark void between stars. It reached systems the Council had never explored, worlds they did not know existed. On one such world, a star system the locals called Sol, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the starship Valiant. He was drinking coffee from a metal cup and reading reports about mining operations on Mars when his communications officer, Lieutenant Lisa Grant, suddenly straightened in her seat. "Captain, I'm getting something strange on the long-range sensors," she said, her fingers dancing across the control panel. "It's a transmission, but not from any Earth's frequency." Morrison set down his coffee and walked over to her station. He was a tall man with brown hair and serious blue eyes. At 35, he had spent half his life in space, first as a pilot, then as a captain in the Terran Defense Corps. Earth's space program was still young, only 50 years old, but it was growing fast. "Play it," he said. The signal filled the bridge of the Valiant. Morrison and his crew listened in silence as the unknown voice pleaded for help. The computer worked to translate the alien language, displaying text on the main screen. "That's not human," whispered Bobby Chen, the ship's engineer. He was a small man with quick hands and an even quicker mind. "Captain, that's an actual alien species calling for help." "I know," Morrison said quietly. His mind was racing. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. They had their answer, and it came with a cry for help. "Should we report this to Earth Command?" asked Amy Foster, the ship's medic. She was young, only 26, but she was the best doctor Morrison had ever served with. "Not yet," Morrison replied. He was studying the star charts, calculating distances and travel times. "Lieutenant Grant, can you trace the source of this signal?" "Already working on it, sir," Lisa said. Her blonde hair was tied back in a regulation ponytail, and her green eyes were focused on her screens. "It's coming from the Kepler 442 system." That's really far out there, Captain." "How far?" asked Ryan Brooks, the tactical officer. He was the youngest member of the crew at 24, but he was sharp and reliable. "About 1,200 light years," Lisa answered. "At maximum speed, it would take us 8 months to get there." Morrison nodded slowly. "And by then, whoever sent this message will be dead. Or enslaved," Bobby added grimly. "Did you hear what they said about the Vorthok? Sounds like a military empire." The bridge fell quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Morrison looked at each of his crew members. They were good people, all volunteers who had joined the Defense Corps to explore space and protect Earth's interests. None of them had ever imagined they would face a situation like this, Captain Amy said softly. "We have to try to help them." "A suicide mission," Ryan pointed out. "We don't know anything about this Vorthok Empire, or how powerful they are. We don't even know if our weapons would work against alien technology. We don't know if they wouldn't work either," Lisa countered. "And we're the only ones who heard this signal and can actually do something about it." Morrison walked to the large window at the front of the bridge and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an alien species was fighting for survival. Against an enemy they could not defeat, Earth's command would never approve a rescue mission this dangerous and this far from home. The smart thing to do was to report the signal and let someone else make the decision. But Morrison knew that by the time the bureaucrats on Earth finished debating, it would be too late. Humanity was going to make first contact with alien life. This might be their only chance. He turned back to his crew. "I'm going to ask each of you to volunteer for something that might get us all killed. We're going to answer that distress call." Amy smiled first. "Count me in, Captain." "Same here," Bobby said, without hesitation. "It's about time we did something important," Lisa added. Ryan was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "If we're humanity's first contact with aliens, I want to make sure we make a good impression." Morrison felt a surge of pride in his crew. "All right then." Lisa set course for the Kepler 442 system. "Maximum speed." "Yes, sir." Course laid in. "Bobby, I want you to start working on our weapon systems. Make sure everything is ready for combat." "Already on it, Captain." "Amy, prepare the medical bay for casualties, both human and potentially alien." "Understood, sir." Ryan, start analyzing everything we know about military tactics and space combat. We might be walking into a war. I'll have a briefing ready by tomorrow, Captain. As the Valiant changed course and accelerated toward the distant star system, Morrison sat back down in his captain's chair. He knew they were probably flying toward their deaths, but he also knew it was the right thing to do. 8 months later, it would arrive at Xerion Prime. They would meet their first aliens and face an enemy that had conquered dozens of worlds. But they had no way of knowing that the galaxy was about to discover what happens when you threaten innocence in front of creatures from a death world called Earth. 8 months of traveling through deep space had changed the crew of the Valiant. They were leaner, harder, and more focused than when they left Earth. Captain Morrison had drilled them constantly, running combat simulations and studying every piece of data they could find about military tactics. They knew this might be their only chance to save an alien species, and they were determined not to waste it. Dropping out of faster-than-light travel in 30 seconds, Lisa announced from the pilot's seat. Her hands moved smoothly over the controls, managing the complex process of returning to normal space. Morrison gripped his chair as the stars outside stopped streaking and became steady points of light. "Take us in slowly, Lieutenant. We don't know what we're flying into." The main screen flickered and showed them their destination. Xerion Prime was a beautiful blue and green world, much like Earth but with 3 small moons. Should have been peaceful and welcoming. Instead, it was surrounded by the dark shapes of enemy warships. "My God," Amy whispered from her medical station. "There must be hundreds of them." The Vorthok fleet hung in space like a swarm of angry insects. Their ships were black and angular, designed to look threatening. Weapon ports bristled along their hulls, and red lights pulsed in patterns that seemed almost alive. "Account 4. 112 enemy vessels," Ryan reported from Tactical. "They have the planet completely surrounded. No ship gets in or out without their permission." "Any sign of the aliens who sent the distress call?" Morrison asked. Bobby was working at his engineering station, scanning the planet's surface. "Detecting cities down there, Captain, but they're heavily damaged. Lots of energy readings that look like weapons fire. The population centers are under constant bombardment." Morrison felt anger building in his chest. These Vorthok were not just conquering the planet, they were terrorizing innocent people for sport. "Can we get closer without being detected?" maybe Lisa said, studying her navigation displays. "There's a lot of debris from destroyed ships. If I'm careful, I can hide us among the wreckage." "Do it." The Valiant crept forward, using the remains of destroyed vessels as cover. Morrison watched the tactical display as they moved deeper into the war zone. Every piece of floating metal had once been someone's ship, someone's hope for escape or resistance. "Captain, I'm getting a communication signal," Ryan announced. "Very weak, coming from the planet's surface." "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was different from the original distress call, but it carried the same desperation. "Unknown vessel, please identify yourself. Are you here to help us? We've been waiting so long for someone to answer our calls." Morrison took a deep breath. This was it. Humanity's first conversation with an alien species. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth ship Valiant. We received your distress signal 8 months ago. We're here to help." There was a long silence. Then the alien voice returned, filled with wonder. "Earth, I do not know this world. You came from outside Council space?" "Came because you asked for help," Morrison replied simply. "What's your situation down there?"
Crystal Leader.
"Of what remains of the Xerian people. Vorthok have surrounded our world for 60 days. They demand our complete surrender and enslavement. We are a peaceful people. We have never known war. We do not know how to fight them." Amy leaned forward. In her chair, "How many of your people are left?" "Perhaps 2 million in the protected cities. We once numbered 50 million, but many have been taken or killed. The Vorthok use terror as a weapon. They destroy our homes to break our spirit." Morrison's hands clenched into fists. "We're going to get you out of this, Kristen. But I need to know what we're dealing with. Can you tell us about Vorthok military capabilities? They are brutal warriors from a harsh world. They live for conquest and domination. Their weapons are powerful, their ships are fast, and they show no mercy to those who resist them. They have conquered dozens of worlds in this sector alone." Bobby was scanning the enemy ships while they talked. "Captain, their technology is definitely more advanced than ours, but not by as much as I expected. Our weapons should be able to damage them." "That's something," Morrison said. He opened the communication channel again. "Kristen, we need to meet in person. Is there a safe place where we can land? The city of New Crystal has defensive shields that still function. It is on the northern continent, coordinates that your computer should be able to translate. But you must be careful. The Vorthok patrol constantly. We'll find a way." Morrison out. Lisa was already plotting a course to the planet's surface. "It's going to be tricky, Captain. I'll have to fly through their patrol routes." "Can you do it?" She grinned. "I've been practicing for 8 months. Let's see what this ship can really do." The next hour was the most intense flying any of them had ever experienced. Lisa piloted the Valiant through the Vorthok fleet like a ghost, using sensor shadows and debris fields to stay hidden. Twice they came within a few hundred meters of enemy ships, but somehow avoided detection. "Beginning atmospheric entry," Lisa announced as they approached the planet. "Hang on, this is going to be rough." The ship shook and bucked as it hit the atmosphere. Through the main screen, Morrison could see the devastation below. Entire cities were burning. The landscape was scarred with crater marks from orbital bombardment. This had once been a beautiful world, but war had turned it into a nightmare. There, Amy pointed at the screen. That must be New Crystal. The Xerion city was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was built from what looked like actual crystal formations, tall spires and graceful arches that caught and reflected sunlight in. Brilliant patterns. A shimmering energy shield surrounded it, protecting it from the destruction outside. Lisa set the Valiant down in a cleared area near the city center. As the engines powered down, they could see figures approaching from the crystal buildings. These were the first aliens any human had ever seen in person. The Xerians were tall and slender, with translucent skin that seemed to glow with inner light. They moved gracefully, almost floating across the ground. Their faces were elongated and delicate, with large eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. Morrison and his crew put on their environmental suits and cycled through the airlock. The planet's air was breathable for humans, but they couldn't take chances on their first alien contact. Kristen approached them slowly. He was taller than the others, with more complex patterns of light flowing beneath his crystal-like skin. When he spoke, his voice was musical and sad. "You actually came," he said, and Morrison could hear the wonder in his voice. "In all our centuries of civilization, we have never seen beings like you. You are solid, dense, built for a harder world than ours." "We're from Earth," Morrison said, removing his helmet so Kristen could see his face. "We're humans. And we're here to help you fight the Vorthok." Kristen's large eyes blinked slowly. "Fight, but we do not know how to fight. We are scientists, artists, philosophers. We have spent our entire history learning and creating, not destroying." Ryan stepped forward, "Then we'll teach you. But first, we need to know what the Vorthok want." "Complete surrender," Kristen replied. "They want us to become their slaves, to use our knowledge and abilities to help them conquer other worlds. If we refuse, they will kill us all and take what they want from our dead cities." Amy felt sick listening to this. How can anyone be so cruel? "The Vorthok believe that might makes right," Kristen explained. "To them, weakness deserves to be conquered. They cannot understand a people who choose peace over war." "Well, they're about to get an education," Morrison said grimly. "Bobby, start scanning their defensive systems. Lisa, I want you to study every inch of this city's layout. Amy, see what kind of medical facilities they have. Ryan, we need to set up a command center." As his crew went to work, Morrison looked up at the energy shield protecting the city. Beyond it, he could see Vorthok ships flying patrol patterns in the sky. They looked confident, arrogant, sure that victory was inevitable. "Tell me about their ground forces," Morrison asked Kristen. "Have they landed troops on the planet?" "Yes, thousands of them. They occupy the outer cities and use them as bases to attack us. Their soldiers are large, brutal creatures who enjoy causing pain." Morrison nodded. "We'll deal with them. First, I need to ask you something important, Kristen. Are you willing to fight for your freedom? Not just defend yourselves, but actively fight back against the Vorthok?" Ristona was quiet for a long moment. "We have never raised our hands in anger against another being. It goes against everything we believe." "Sometimes," Morrison said softly, "the most peaceful people have to fight to protect what they love. The Vorthok won't stop unless someone stops them."
Ow.
"Then we will try to learn," Kristen replied. "Though I fear we will be poor students of war." "Don't worry," Morrison smiled, but his eyes were cold as ice. "You won't be fighting alone." Above the planet, Vorthok sensors detected the human ship's landing. General Thrak, commander of the siege fleet, studied the readings with interest. The vessel was small, clearly not a warship, and its technology was primitive by galactic standards. "Should we destroy it?" asked Zaid. The first Vorthok patrol arrived at dawn, just as Morrison had expected. Ryan spotted them through his binoculars from the Crystal Tower, where he had set up his observation post. 6 enemy soldiers in black armor were moving through the ruins. Outside New Crystal's shield, their weapons ready. Contact, Ryan whispered into his communicator. 6 hostiles approaching from the east. Their big captain. Really big. Morrison crouched behind a crystal formation near the city's edge, watching the patrol through the shimmering energy barrier. The Vorthok soldiers were indeed massive, at least 8 feet tall, with thick, muscular builds. Their armor was spiked and intimidating, designed to frighten enemies before the fighting even started. They moved like they owned the place, Lisa observed from her position. She was hidden in the wreckage of a Xerion transport. Her rifle trained on the approaching enemy, Bobby was monitoring the shield generator from the city's control center. Shields holding steady, but these things aren't designed for combat. It's meant to keep out weather and small debris, not military weapons. The lead Vorthok soldier stopped just outside the energy barrier and activated some kind of communication device. His voice boomed across the area, translated by the universal systems the Xerians had provided. "Attention unknown vessel and crew," the alien growled. "You will surrender immediately and prepare to be transported to our command ship. Resistance is futile and will result in immediate termination." Morrison stepped out from behind his cover, making sure the Vorthok could see him clearly. "This is Captain Morrison. You're the ones who need to surrender. Leave this planet immediately and we won't have to hurt you." The Vorthok soldiers looked at each other and began laughing. It was a harsh, ugly sound that echoed across the ruins. The leader raised his weapon, a massive energy rifle that glowed with menacing red light. "You are either very brave or very stupid, little alien," he snarled. 6 Vorthok warriors against one small creature and his pathetic crystal friends. "This will be over quickly." "You're right," Morrison agreed calmly. "It will be." The lead Vorthok fired his weapon at the energy shield. The blast struck the barrier and scattered harmlessly, but the shield flickered and began to weaken. Bobby's voice crackled through the communicator. "Shield's taking damage, Captain. Maybe 3 more shots like that and it'll fail." "Copy that," Morrison replied. He looked at Kristen, who was watching from inside the city with several other Xerians. Their crystalline faces showed fear and confusion. They'd never seen violence like this before. The second Vorthok soldier raised his weapon. But before he could fire, Ryan's shot took him down. The enemy warrior collapsed with a surprised grunt, his armor smoking from the precise hit to a joint where the protective plates met. "What?" The leader spun around, trying to locate the shooter. "Where did that come from?" Lisa's shot answered. Him dropping another soldier before he could react. The remaining 3 Vorthok began firing wildly at the crystal formations, trying to hit enemies they couldn't see. "Impossible," the leader snarled. "No species shoots with that accuracy."
"Actors, show!"
"Yourselves, cowards." Amy had positioned herself in the ruins to the south with her medical equipment, but she also carried a sidearm. Her shot caught the 4th Vorthok in the leg, sending him stumbling into Bobby's line of fire. The engineer's bullet finished him. Off now, only 2 Vorthok remained, and their confidence was rapidly turning to panic. They had expected to face weak, peaceful aliens, not skilled marksmen who could pick them off from concealment. "This is impossible," the leader repeated, his voice showing fear for the first time. "What kind of beings are you?" Morrison stepped out into the open again, his weapon lowered, but ready. "We're humans. We're from a world you've never heard of, and we don't like bullies." The leader tried to raise his weapon, but Ryan's shot from the tower took him down before he could complete the motion. The last Vorthok soldier looked around frantically at his fallen comrades, then threw down his rifle and raised his hands. "Surrender," he shouted. "Don't shoot. I surrender." Morrison walked up to the alien, keeping his weapon trained on him. Up close, the Vorthok was even more imposing, with red eyes, sharp teeth, and scars covering his exposed skin. He was built for intimidation and violence, but right now he looked terrified. "Smart choice," Morrison said. "What's your name?" "Sergeant Brock," the alien replied, his voice shaking. "Please don't kill me. I have younglings back home." "We're not going to kill you, Brock, but you're going to answer some questions." Amy arrived with her medical kit, checking the fallen Vorthok soldiers. Most were dead, but one was still breathing. She immediately began treating his wounds, which confused Sergeant Brock completely. "Why do you help him?" Brock asked. "He is your enemy, because that's what we do," Amy replied simply. "We help people who are hurt, even if they were trying to hurt us." This concept seemed to break something in Brock's understanding of the universe, but he tried to kill you. In Vorthok culture, wounded enemies are left to die or finished off quickly. "We're not Vorthok," Morrison said. Tell me about your forces. How many soldiers do you have on the ground? Brock hesitated, then seemed to decide that cooperation was his best chance of survival. 2,000 ground troops spread across 15 camps around the planet. Another 50,000 aboard the fleet in orbit? Ryan whistled low. 50,000. That's a lot of angry aliens. What does General Thrak want with the Xerians specifically? Morrison asked. Their technology? Brock replied. They can manipulate energy and matter in ways we don't understand. The General believes their knowledge will make our empire unstoppable. Kristen approached cautiously, staring at the scene of violence with his large, sad eyes. You fought them so easily. They seemed powerful and frightening, but you defeated them without effort. It wasn't without effort, Morrison corrected. But we've been fighting each other on Earth for thousands of years. We know how to work together. In combat? I don't understand, Kristen said. You fight your own species? Lisa rejoined the group, checking her weapon. Humans have been at war with each other for most of our history. We've learned to be very good at it out of necessity. But you also help your enemies when they're wounded, Kristen observed, watching Amy work on the injured Vorthok. This is a contradiction I cannot grasp. It's complicated, Morrison admitted. We fight hard when we have to, but we try to stay human while we're doing it. Bobby's voice came through their communicators. Captain, I'm picking up movement from multiple Vorthok camps. Looks like they noticed their patrol didn't come back. We've got company coming. Morrison looked at his crew, then at Kristen and the other Xerians who had gathered to watch. How fast can your people learn? We are quick students when we must. B, Kristen replied. Good, because class is about to begin. Over the next several hours, the humans worked frantically to prepare the Xerians for war. It was like trying to teach children to fight, but these children had advanced technology and desperate motivation. Morrison showed Kristen and his advisors basic military tactics. Using models made from crystal to demonstrate formations and strategies, the concepts of flanking, covering fire, and coordinated attacks were completely foreign to beings who had never raised a hand in anger. Ryan worked with a group of young Xerians, teaching them how to aim and fire the energy weapons their people had hastily modified from mining equipment. Most of them closed their eyes when they pulled the trigger, which made accurate shooting nearly impossible. You have to keep your eyes open, Ryan explained patiently for the 10th time. How can you hit your target if you can't see it? But it feels wrong to look at someone while causing them harm, one young Xerian replied. I know it does. But if you don't learn to do this, the Vorthok will kill everyone you care about. Lisa was teaching basic vehicle operation to Xerian pilots who had never considered that their transport craft could be used for combat.
Bobby worked on turning their mining and construction equipment into improvised weapons. Amy set up a medical
station and began training Xerian healers in trauma surgery. Their advanced medical knowledge combined with human emergency techniques produced remarkable results. But she worried about their emotional ability to handle battlefield casualties. The while reports came in from Bobby's sensor network. Vorthok forces were moving. Multiple camps were sending troops toward New Crystal. They would arrive by nightfall in overwhelming numbers. This is insane, Lisa said quietly to Morrison during a brief break. 5 humans and 2 million crystal people who've never fought anyone against an empire that's conquered dozens of worlds. The numbers don't look good, Morrison agreed, but numbers aren't everything. The Vorthok expect the Xerians to roll over and surrender. They don't expect resistance, and they definitely don't expect us. What makes you think we can win? Morrison looked out at the Xerians practicing with their improvised weapons. Their crystal faces set with determination they had never felt before. Because we're not just fighting for ourselves anymore. We're fighting for people who can't fight. For themselves, that changes everything. As the sun began to set over Xerion Prime, Sergeant Brock watched the humans and Xerians preparing their defenses. He had sent reports back to General Thrak about these strange new beings, but he wasn't sure the general believed him. General Thrak watched the battlefield reports with growing anger. 3 separate Vorthok ground forces had attacked New Crystal during the night, and all 3 had been driven back with heavy losses. This should have been impossible. Explain to me again how 5 unknown aliens and a group of crystal farmers defeated my elite soldiers. Thrak growled at his aide. Commander Vex shifted nervously in his chair. The reports are consistent, General. These humans use tactics we've never encountered. They don't fight like any known species. Show me the battle recordings. The holographic display filled with images from the night's fighting. Thrak watched as small groups of humans moved through the darkness like ghosts, striking hard and fast, before disappearing again. They used the terrain perfectly, turning every piece of cover into a weapon. Look at this. Vex pointed to one section. Of the recording, human female pilots their small craft through our artillery fire like it's a training exercise. She's completed maneuvers that should be impossible. Thrak studied Lisa's flying with professional interest. The human pilot had taken a Xerion transport craft and turned it into a weapon of war. Diving through Vorthok formations and striking at exactly the right moments to cause maximum confusion. And here, Vex continued, their engineer has turned mining equipment into siege weapons. Those crystal formations weren't random placement. They built a fortress overnight using their enemy's own tactics against them. The recordings showed Bobby's work throughout the night. He had repositioned the city's crystal growths to create perfect defensive positions, each one designed to channel Vorthok attacks into killing zones where Ryan and the trained Xerians waited. What about their medical procedures? Thrak asked. That's the strangest part, Vex replied. They treat wounded Vorthok soldiers with the same care they give their own people. Several of our warriors report being healed by the human medic, then released to return to our lines. This made no sense to Thrak. In Vorthok culture, enemies were resources to be used or destroyed. The idea of healing someone who would immediately return to fight against you was madness. Perhaps it's a psychological weapon, Vex suggested. Confusion tactics designed to weaken our soldiers' fighting spirit. No, Thrak said slowly. I think they actually believe in what they're doing. Sergeant Brock's reports support this. These humans have a moral code that governs their actions even in war. Should we adjust our strategy? Thrak stood and walked to the large viewport of his command ship. Below, Xerion Prime spun peacefully, looking nothing like the war zone it had become. Send everything. All ground forces, all atmospheric fighters. I want those humans captured alive for study. I want the Xerians to see what happens when someone defies the Vorthok Empire. On the planet's surface, Morrison was checking the defenses one last time before the major assault began. His crew had worked miracles in the past 12 hours, but they all knew the real test was coming. Status report, he called out. Defensive positions are ready, Ryan replied from his command post. I've got 40 Xerians who can actually hit what they're aiming at now, and Bobby's traps are in place. The wounded are stable, Amy reported. From the medical center, including 8 Vorthok soldiers who keep asking why we're helping them. Transport craft are fueled and ready, Lisa added. If we need to evacuate civilians, I can get them out in 3 trips. Bobby looked up from his engineering station. All the modified mining equipment is online. We've got enough firepower to hurt them, but not enough to stop them all. Morrison nodded. The numbers were still terrible, intelligence reports suggested. That Thrak was sending his entire ground force against New Crystal. 2,000 Vorthok soldiers supported by aircraft and heavy weapons, against 5 humans and a handful of crystal beings who had learned to fight in one day. Kristen, how are your people holding up? The Xerion leader's crystalline face showed stress patterns that Morrison had learned to recognize. They are frightened, but determined. We understand now that some things are worth fighting for. Even if fighting goes against our nature, you've done well. All of you have. We had good teachers, Kristen replied. Your species is remarkable, Captain Morrison. You combine the instincts of predators with the hearts of protectors. I've never seen anything like it. Morrison was about to respond when alarms began sounding throughout the city. Bobby's sensors had detected the incoming assault force. Here. They come, Ryan announced. Multiple formations approaching from all directions. This is it, people. The attack began with orbital bombardment. Thrak ships in space fired precisely targeted strikes at New Crystal's shield generators. The energy barrier that had protected the city for so long flickered and failed under the concentrated firepower. Shields down, Bobby reported. We're wide open. Vorthok aircraft screamed overhead, their weapons lighting up the morning sky. But they found themselves flying into a web of defensive fire that shouldn't have existed. Ryan had positioned his Xerion gunners perfectly, and their modified mining equipment proved devastatingly effective against low-flying targets. First squadron down, Lisa called out as burning Vorthok fighters crashed into the crystal formations. But there are a lot more coming. The ground assault began from 3 directions simultaneously. Vorthok soldiers in their black armor charged across the open ground toward the city. Expecting to overwhelm the defenders through sheer numbers and aggression, instead, they ran into Bobby's trap system. Carefully placed explosives turned the approach routes into a maze of destruction. Mining charges designed to break apart asteroids proved equally effective against Vorthok battle armor. They're not stopping, Ryan observed, picking off enemy soldiers with precise shots. They just keep coming over the bodies of their own dead. That's their way, Morrison replied, firing his own weapon from a crystal rampart. They believe that overwhelming force solves every problem. Amy worked frantically in her medical station as wounded Xerians were brought in. The crystal people were not built for warfare, and even light injuries could be serious for their delicate physiologies. But she noticed something remarkable happening. "Captain," she called out during a brief lull in the fighting, "are covering each other now? They're protecting the wounded and making sure no one fights alone." Morrison looked around and saw what she meant. The peaceful crystal people had learned more than just how to aim weapons. They had learned the most important lesson of all, how to fight as a team. But the Vorthok kept coming. For every enemy soldier that fell, 2 more took his place. Morrison's crew was running low on ammunition, and the Xerian defenders were exhausted. From the constant pressure, "Can't hold them much longer," Ryan reported. "They're breaking through on the east side." Morrison made a decision that would have seemed insane to any military strategist in the galaxy. Instead of falling back to secondary defensive positions, he grabbed his weapon and headed for the front lines. "Where are you going?" Lisa shouted. "To show them something they've never seen before," Morrison replied. A human who's tired of watching bullies hurt innocent people. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for generations. Morrison didn't retreat or try to establish new defensive lines. Instead, he charged directly into the largest group of Vorthok soldiers, his weapon firing constantly. The enemy warriors were so surprised by this impossible tactic that they hesitated for a crucial moment. In that moment, Ryan, Lisa, Bobby, and Amy joined their captain's charge, followed by every Xerian who could still fight. The sight of 5 humans leading a group of crystal beings in a desperate frontal assault broke something in the Vorthok psyche. These were creatures who understood only dominance and submission. They had never encountered beings who would charge into certain death to protect others. "Impossible," General Thrak whispered from his command ship as he watched the battle. Recordings. "No species fights like that. They're outnumbered, outgunned, and they're attacking." The human charge drove deep into Vorthok lines before finally being stopped by sheer weight of numbers. Morrison and his crew found themselves surrounded in the center of New Crystal, cut off from their remaining defenders. "Well," Lisa said, reloading her weapon, "at least we made an impression." Morrison asked his crew. "Just one," Ryan replied. "I wish more people could have seen what humans can do when they're protecting something worth fighting for." Amy was treating a wounded Xerian even as enemy soldiers closed in around them. "At least we tried. At least we showed them that someone cared enough to answer their call." Bobby was working on one last surprise, a final explosive device that would take out the remaining Vorthok command structure. "Hey, Captain, want to see something cool?" Before Morrison could answer, the sky above them filled with new ships. But these weren't Vorthok vessels. They were sleek, powerful warships bearing markings that none of the aliens had ever seen before. "Captain Morrison," a voice crackled through every communication device in the area. "This is Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Terran Defense Fleet. We got your message. Sorry we're late." Morrison looked up at the sky and smiled. "Never thought I'd be so happy to see the cavalry." The real battle was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threatened humans and their friends. The Terran Defense Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, like angels of war descending from heaven. 12 massive warships took position around Xerion Prime, their weapons already charged and targeting the Vorthok fleet.
Admiral.
Kate. Sullivan stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Defender, watching the tactical displays with cold blue eyes. "Status report," she ordered. 412 enemy vessels detected, her tactical officer replied. "We've got the planet. Completely surrounded? Not anymore, they don't. All ships, open fire. Target the largest vessels first. Let's show these aliens what happens when they threaten our people." The space battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The human warships moved with deadly precision, their weapons cutting through Vorthok shields like they were made of paper. What had taken the Vorthok fleet 60 days to establish around Xerion Prime was torn apart in less than an hour. General Thrak watched his fleet being destroyed from his command ship and felt something he had never experienced before: pure terror. His ships were powerful, his weapons advanced. But the humans fought with a level of coordination and ruthlessness that defied belief. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his aide. "Our ships are superior. Our numbers are greater." "They're not fighting like individuals," Commander Vex replied, studying the battle data. "Every human ship moves as part of a larger plan. They're like a pack of hunters working together to bring down prey." On the planet's surface, the Vorthok ground forces had stopped their assault to stare up at the sky. Burning pieces of their fleet were falling like meteors, lighting up the atmosphere with trails of fire. The soldiers who had been moments away from victory now found themselves cut off from all support. Morrison and his crew watched the space battle from their surrounded position in New Crystal. The sight of human warships tearing apart the Vorthok fleet filled them with pride and relief. "Count 12 ships," Ryan observed. "That's a full battle group. Earth really pulled out all the stops." "Look at them move," Lisa added admiringly. "Perfect formation, flying even in combat, which makes my little aerobatics look like child's play." Admiral Sullivan's voice crackled through their communicators again. "Captain Morrison, we're reading your position. Hold tight. We're coming to get you out of there," Negative Admiral Morrison replied. "We've got wounded Xerians who can't be moved, and there are still civilians in the city. We need extraction for them first." There was a pause before Sullivan responded. "Understood, Captain. We'll secure the area and begin civilian evacuation. All Vorthok forces, this is Admiral Sullivan of the Terran Defense Fleet. You have 60 seconds to surrender unconditionally, or we will destroy you where you stand." The Vorthok soldiers around New Crystal looked at each other uncertainly. Their fleet was gone, their air support was destroyed, and now these terrifying humans were giving them ultimatums. Many had never encountered a species that fought with such overwhelming effectiveness. General Thrak's voice boomed across all communication channels. "Vorthok warriors, do not surrender. Fight to the death. Bring honor to the Empire." But something had broken in the Vorthok forces. Sergeant Brock, who had been treated with kindness by the humans despite being their prisoner, made a decision that would change everything. "General Thrak is wrong," he announced to the soldiers around him. "These humans are not like us. They are warriors, yes, but they are also protectors. They fight only to defend, not to conquer." "What are you saying?" demanded a Vorthok captain. "I'm saying we've been wrong about everything," Brock replied. "I've watched them fight, and I've watched them heal. They could have killed me, but instead they showed mercy." When did we become the monsters in this story? More Vorthok soldiers began laying down their weapons. The sight of their mighty fleet being destroyed so easily had shaken their faith in Vorthok's superiority. These humans had shown them that there were other ways to be strong. Admiral Sullivan's landing craft touched down near New Crystal. Human Marines poured out to secure the area. They moved with the same deadly efficiency their ships had shown in space, but Morrison noticed something that made him proud. "Look at how they're treating the surrendering Vorthok," he said to Kristen. "No revenge, no cruelty. They're taking prisoners according to military law." Kristen watched in amazement as human medics began treating wounded Vorthok soldiers alongside injured Xerians. "Your species continues to surprise me, Captain. You fight like demons, but you show compassion like angels." Admiral Sullivan approached Morrison's position, flanked by her security detail. She was a tall woman with silver hair and the bearing of someone who had spent her life in command. When she saw Morrison and his crew, her stern expression softened slightly. "Captain Morrison, you and your crew have exceeded every expectation. When we received your transmission 8 months ago, most people thought you were flying to your deaths. We might have been, if you hadn't shown up when you did," Morrison replied. "How did you know we needed help? We've been monitoring your communications. When we lost contact 3 days ago, I knew you were in trouble," the president authorized. A full military response. Sullivan looked around at the battlefield, taking in the destruction and the strange sight of humans and aliens working together. "I have to admit, we weren't sure what we'd find when we got here. We found people who needed help," Morrison said simply. Everything else just followed from that. Commander Danny Price, Sullivan's diplomatic officer, is already working with Kristen to establish formal first contact protocols. The Xerians were eager to share their knowledge and grateful beyond words for human intervention. "We want to join this Galactic Council we've been hearing about," Price explained to Morrison. "But we want to do it as protectors, not conquerors." "Galaxy needs protectors," Kristen agreed. "There are many peaceful species who live in fear of empires like the Vorthok. Perhaps humans can show them a different way." General Thrak was brought aboard the Defender in restraints, his red eyes burning with hatred and confusion. He demanded to speak with Admiral Sullivan personally. "You have destroyed my fleet and captured my army," he snarled. "What do you want? What is your price for victory?" Sullivan studied the alien general with cold professionalism. "We want you to stop. No more conquering peaceful worlds, no more enslaving innocent species. Find something better to do with your lives." "Impossible. Conquest is our nature. We are Vorthok. We take what we want." "Then you'll spend the rest of your life in prison thinking about how that worked out for you." Thrak couldn't understand. In his experience, victorious species either destroyed their enemies or enslaved them. The idea of rehabilitation and second chances was completely foreign to his worldview. "What about my soldiers? About my people?" "Your soldiers who surrendered are being offered the chance to return home with a message," Sullivan replied. "Tell the Vorthok Empire that the galaxy has new protectors now. If they want to continue their conquests, they'll have to go through us first." 6 months later, Morrison stood in the Galactic Council chambers on Alpha 7 Station. Humanity had been formally inducted as the Council's first Deathworld species, and Morrison had been promoted to Admiral in charge of the new Galactic Protection Force. The former Vorthok territories had been liberated, their enslaved populations free to rebuild their worlds. Many Vorthok soldiers, inspired by Sergeant Brock's example, had joined the human-led peacekeeping forces. They were slowly learning that strength could be used to protect instead of dominate. Kristen approached Morrison. As the council session ended, the Xerion leader now served as humanity's primary alien ally, helping to bridge the gap between human military thinking and galactic diplomatic traditions. "I've been thinking about that first day when you landed on our world," Kristen said. "You told me that sometimes peaceful people have to fight to protect what they love. I remember. I think I understand now. Fighting and protecting are not the same thing. Your species fights not because you enjoy violence, but because you cannot bear to watch innocent people suffer." Morrison nodded. "We're not perfect, Kristen. We make mistakes, and we've done terrible things to each other throughout our history. Out! But when someone calls for help, we answer. That's just who we are. The galaxy is safer because of who you are," Kristen replied. "Elder Zara says that in all her centuries of life, she has never seen a species like yours. It's dangerous enough to defeat any enemy, but wise enough to show mercy to the defeated." Through the large windows of the council chamber, Morrison could see human patrol ships maintaining watch over the peaceful worlds of the inner systems. Earth's children had found their place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as guardians. The Deathworlders had come to the galaxy's rescue, and they intended to stay.